viewers, economic integration is the unification of policies between different states through the partial or full abolition of tariff and non-tariff restrictions on trade taking place among them prior to their integration. This is meant, in turn, to lead to lower prices for distributors and consumers with the goal of increasing the combined economic productivity of the states involved within the integrated economic and market environment. This is MNC Business, and you are on Econ. There are always economic as well as political reasons why nations around the world pursue economic integration. The economic rationale for the increase of trade between member states of economic unions, that is, it is meant to lead to higher productivity. This is one of the reasons for the global scale development of economic integration, a phenomenon that is not being increasingly realized. What main importance does it really have on a nation's economic development and growth? We have the report.
Economic integration is defined as an economic arrangement between different regions marked by the reduction or elimination of trade barriers and the coordination of monetary and fiscal policy. The aim of economic integration is to reduce costs for both consumers and producers, as well as to increase trade between the countries taking part in the agreement. By integrating the economies of more than one country, the short-term benefits from the use of tariffs and other trade barriers is diminished. At the same time, the more integrated the economies become, the less power the governments of the member nations have to make adjustments that would benefit themselves. In periods of economic growth, being integrated can lead to greater long-term economic benefits. However, in periods of poor growth, being integrated can actually make things worse. Global economic integration is not a new phenomenon. It has been on a generally rising trend. The process of globalization in the economic domain has not always proceeded smoothly, nor has it always benefited all whom it has affected. But despite occasional interruptions, the degree of economic integration among different societies around the world has generally been obviously rising. There are several stages in the process of economic integration, from a very loose association of countries in a provincial trade area to complete economic integration, where the economies of member countries are completely integrated. What main benefits economic and market integration could contribute to a nation's economic development like Indonesia? MNC Business Report for Economic Buff, MNC Business Channel.
And to have a deeper view about the importance of economic integration, we have Daniel Belther, Indonesia representative. Daniel, how very nice to have you back in this show. I believe it's going to be another interesting and insightful discussion, especially we have the expert. For this particular theme, we are going to take the topic about the importance of economic. First of all, before we talk about what are the main reason why should nations integrated together and united in the same bond in terms of developing their economy through business activity, I would like to ask your general perspective. How do you see the current dynamics of our global economic situation nowadays?
I'm consistently fascinated by the economic environment right now. You know, I finally have saved some money and have some money to invest, but I'm very confused on where to put my money because based on globalization, we are able to invest in so many countries and so many companies, and you know, America's doing good, even though that we're coming off of quantitative easing. You know, we see the dollar increasing versus the rupiah, where check today and it's $1 equals 13,200. When I first came here 4 years ago, we were just around 10,000 rupiah per dollar, and so but we just printed a bunch of money, and so it's very confusing on where is good. You know, in the Middle East we're seeing war problems, in Russia we're seeing issues. Europe is having their stagnation issues, in the European Union, which is, you know, the best example of an economic community together, is having its problems. Brazil is stagnant, and so China is slowing, and so these big economies are slowing or finding a more consistent line. So it's harder to find growth, which is also confusing to me to be able to invest money somewhere personally. While businesses, of course, will be looking for the new markets and to reach new customer bases.
Given that situation, on your personal opinion as well, do you think that this is it? This is the best time for us to figure out something, the way out, to together finding the solution by integrating ourselves through whatever format of integration, let's say a market integration or globalization, one single market?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's happening slowly but surely. I mean, globalization, I mean, this trend has really been going for what, maybe 30 or 40 years, where for the past 20 years we've really seen the pickup. And so I think it's inevitable now that globalization is going to continue to take charge. And companies and corporations and populations and consumers and everybody likes their products and the diversity of opportunities. And everyone wants a cheaper product as well, or a quality good for a lower price. And so I don't think there's any stopping globalization. And so the countries that, you know, are more protectionist and trying to fight it are going to lose out, because they're not going to be able to build the competencies to compete in the global economy.
Since single nation are becoming insulated as well, right, from whatever happened with the global situation. You actually, how an economic integration should be defined? Because people keep discussing about this main purpose of lowering the tariff barrier and so forth. What would you define?
Well, there's numerous levels of economic integration. I mean, we have the free trade agreements, which are a base level, and that's just a bilateral or a multilateral agreement where countries agree to lower their tariffs or non-tariff trade barriers to facilitate trade between, you know, and improve productivity, or to be able to source goods for a better cost, or a new number of reasons. And then, you know, we can go to the other spectrum where there's, you know, political and economic integration, which, you know, the EU has been trying to get into, and they've been working on economic integration and moving into the political integration for decades now. You know, 50 plus years they've been working.
Correct.
So, but we're also seeing the challenges that come in doing that, especially when you have different cultures, different languages, different policies of countries trying to work together.
The gap is obviously there. Very great start, Daniel. A lot of strong point to start with us. For the later session, I would like to ask you. You just mentioned economy and politically. Can it be going one in hand after this one? Make sure you are still with us on Economic Class. We are now discussing with Daniel Elfer about the importance. On business features, globalization is indirectly responsible to give direct impact on the environmental aspect, as with other areas such as development, employment, and finance. It makes both problems and benefits more apparent. Yet, globalization can also help lessen and prevent environmental damage. For example, international trade can help spread the most sophisticated environmental solutions far and wide, particularly with regard to global warming.
Globalization has ushered in an era of contrast, of fast-paced change and persistent problems. It implies a growing degree of interdependence among economies and societies through cross-country flows of information, ideas, technologies, goods, services, capital, finance, and people. It has challenged the traditional capacity of national governments to regulate and control. The rapid pace of economic integration, a central force behind, and a manifestation of globalization has led to interlinked world markets and economies demanding synchronization of national policies on a number of issues. One dimension of this coordination concerns the environment, from shared natural resources such as fisheries and biological diversity to the potential for transboundary pollution, spillovers across the land, over water, and through the air. We now understand that governance defined solely by the traditional notion of national territorial sovereignty cannot protect us from global-scale environmental threats. An effective response to these challenges will require fresh thinking, refined strategies, and new mechanisms for international cooperation. Globalization can basically have both positive and negative effects on the environment. It can exacerbate environmental problems as well as provide new means for addressing them. Environmental choices can also shape the path of globalization, as national regulatory choices may act as barriers to liberalize trade or trigger a convergence toward higher international standards. Industry, global capital movements, and globalized research and innovation is expected to help promote sources of green growth and are particularly effective instruments to fight pollution and climate change on a global scale. MNC Business Report for Economic Buzz, MNC Business Channel.
We would like to greet you business people in Singapore. You are on Buzz, the English talk show program that offers the economic and social issue for your business plan. We are now still discussing about the importance of economic integration with Dan Belfler, the representative of Structures Asia. Don't forget to watch our live streaming through sindonews.com and okzone.tv. You already explained to us earlier why should we create this kind of integration, either on the market integration, business integration, or even more further globalization on the business and economy. In the end, what main factors that drive this kind of global or maybe regional economic integration when you say that this is something inevitable?
Yeah, I mean, there's many factors that'll drive it, but I mean, the bottom line is that countries and companies within their countries want to make money. And if you're not really improving on technologies and innovating, then you need to do it through efficiencies. So by working with the countries that you're closest to and that you're near, and maybe you have a lot of similarities between each other, sure there'll be plenty of differences, but more similar than, say, Indonesia and America. So Indonesia is much more similar to Malaysia than it is to America. And so it would be easier to work together to improve efficiencies on, say, logistics, harmonizing rules, making transportation between countries more simple and more easy. And so you save money. The companies save money there, and then you're able to reinvest those additional profits and to be able to better compete on a global stage.
When integration and this kind of market cooperation seems to be much more interesting and easier by the time it is done by countries who have similarities, don't you think that one day this is going to create new geopolitical, like creating these new blocks, like what happened earlier in the Cold War situation? What do you think? Because people prefer to have someone, a buddy, a fellow who has similarities only.
Yes and no. I mean, again, going back to the EU, that's a great example. That came after a war, after World War II, where most economies were devastated and the countries had serious infrastructure issues, and they agreed to be able to work together to improve their economies and be a European community and strive for their goals. And they haven't had a war in Western Europe and in Europe proper for quite a long time. And so those countries are all very different from each other in their culture, their language, their background, their art, history, etc.
Perhaps political view as well. Right?
Exactly, exactly. And so when we look going forward, so of course that there's going to be differences, and so we'll look at Southeast Asia, is that the cultures and the people among Southeast Asia are incredibly different in religion and languages again, and geography, whatnot, but they're the closest together. They have a base They come from a similar base. They're looking for growth. They're looking for investment dollars. They're looking to compete globally. And so I think that's, you do start to carve out geopolitical blocks, but that's going to happen anyway. We see China taking a very active role with the ASEAN +3. Japan is typically one of the largest investors in Southeast Asia, and they play a serious role. And of course, based on making money and that cooperation, the politics come in of where you're going to work more closely with some rather than others. But then you also see challenges and problems, with the South China Sea issue. So China is playing a very large and active role in Southeast Asia, but a whole bunch of Southeast Asian countries are very frustrated and angry with China as well. And so then we go to America that has been a little bit of the policeman of the world for quite some time, and we're seeing this geopolitical dynamic go across with China, America, Southeast Asian countries, or other
Daniel, on what you see, or based on your observation, do you see this kind of insecurity feelings among those big, gigantic business players on the global scale? America, China, and the other major players like Japan. The insecurity feeling, if I don't ally with several countries, I'm going to lose this country. That's why each of them create their own integration nowadays. As can be seen, we have the pattern there.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it right?
For the big companies, they control a lot of the wealth, and they're the ones that are going to have connections in politics as well. Whether it's China, America, Indonesia, whatever, it doesn't matter what country it is, but money will control policies in the long run. I mean, you have lobbyists, you have lawyers. I mean, whatever you want, if you have money, you can push your agenda. And so, yes, I see companies pushing that for sure. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because I mean, these companies are all competing on a global basis, trying to get a foothold in each of the countries. So whether they're providing more jobs, better products, improvements in technology, building infrastructure, with that money, development, and the search for more customers comes development as well.
Okay, it will lead me to this particular point as well. Who will benefit the most by the time we're talking about this kind of market business cooperation and integration among nations? After this one, Daniel. More on the discussion about the importance of economic integration will be brought to you soon. Stay with us on Economic Buzz. This is MNC Business Channel and Starhub Asia, Singapore. As the government's regulation implementation is seen not to be pro-poor people, the number of poverty rate in Indonesia tends to be increasing dramatically. Therefore, the government is expected to be consistently facilitating the poor and less fortunate people, not only by spreading welfare cards.
Poverty in Indonesia is reported to be increasing as the impact of government's regulation implementation, which is considered to be not supporting poor people in the country. For example, the fuel price adjustment recently, which leads into increasing basic necessity price, is definitely burdening the poor people. Based on the data, the number of poor people in Indonesia is increasing by 1/3 of the total number of poor people in the country. Looking at the situation, government is expected to facilitate poor people consistently so that they wouldn't be burdened by the situation, especially Indonesia economy is also reported to be slowing down.
Kebijakan pemerintah memang harus didorong terus untuk lebih memfasilitasi mereka-mereka yang pada level terbawah. Sekarang sudah berusaha untuk memberikan perlindungan, memberikan safety net, kan adanya kartu-kartu segala macam begitu. Setelah itu tahap berikutnya harus lebih dari itu, termasuk peningkatan kapasitas dan sebagainya.
It is predicted that the number of poor people in Indonesia will keep on increasing where the government is not able to anticipate the economic slowdown and also food price which is not controlled well, especially approaching Ramadan. Therefore, to prevent the situation getting even worsened, concrete solution is needed from the government. Jakarta, Ayos Carlos, MNC Business.
In order to reduce slum areas in big cities, the central government is preparing 4 trillion rupiah of fund allocated in the state budget. Yet the massive urbanization occurs in the country becomes one remarkable node for the government to accelerate the program implementation.
High urbanization in Indonesia is reported to give a domino effect in big cities in the country. For example, due to many people areas moving out from rural areas to the town, it caused more unemployment, poverty, and not to mention slum areas in the corner of the big cities. As Ramadan is getting closer, it is feared for even higher urbanization to occur in the country, as people tend to find jobs in big cities, which are considered to have bigger opportunity of employment. According to the Minister of Public Work and Public Housing in 2014, slum area in big cities has reached 38,000 hectares more. Therefore, to prevent the areas getting even bigger in 2015, the ministry is preparing fund of 4 trillion rupiah from state budget to support the government strategy to reduce slum area in the country.
Nah, untuk mencegah orang itu berpindah ke kota untuk mencari lapangan pekerjaan, ya kita harus menciptakan pusat-pusat pertumbuhan juga di luar daripada kota-kota yang ada sekarang ini, agar mereka tidak berbondong-bondong.
With government's program of development acceleration supported with the budget allocation from the state budget, the Ministry of Public Works and Public Housing is targeting in 2019 there wouldn't be any slum area in big cities. As it has been known, this year, government is planning to reduce slum area into 30,744 hectares and would keep being reduced until 0 hectare in 2019. Jakarta, Ayos Carlos, MNC Business.
Like on Economic Buzz, this program can also be viewed through StarHub Asia Channel 121 and Singapore with me, Erwin Suryabrata. He's left Daniel Belfler, Indonesia representative at Praxis Asia. We also invite you to join and watch us through live streaming through okzone.tv and sindonews.com. We are discussing about the importance of economic integration. When we can inline our goal, purpose, and mission regarding this kind of economic activity, business purpose as well, one day can we somehow follow this kind of great cooperation to the political? Can economic integration followed by political engagement and political, can they go hand in hand?
Yeah, they certainly can go hand in hand. And back to my previous point of that money is going to control political directions many times as well. And so if you have enough people, and that's the difference that you need to see is, you know, are your businessmen in your country, are they being more protectionist of their countries so they can maintain their own interests because they don't think they can compete with the other countries? Or are they looking for growth opportunities abroad where cooperation and economic liberalization, working with other countries are really going to widen their market, and improve competitiveness and improve efficiency? And so, you know, it really depends on your business people and what their motivation are and where they think that they can go and how they can compete.
Trade liberalization. Some, even most people, really give this a bad name or label by the time we talk about liberalizing our economic and business activity integrated with the other nations. That's why it creates also the contra side. We talk about the pro. How do you comment on this? When we talk about the increasing number of people being on the contra position, opposing this kind of economic integration and liberalization, especially those coming from the very protectionist country.
Yeah, and so, I mean, in general, I think we've seen a lot of cases where trade liberalization certainly makes more money in general on a bottom line. And when you're doing it with countries that are closer and nearer with you, it will end up making more money. You know, the issue though is who is going to benefit. You know, are there poor policies that are being put in place or not? Are there ways to improve your workers so they can continue to move along and go with the way that the economies are shifting and changing labor demand? That is the thing that the government needs to do, is they need to be able to see how their economy is changing, engage how they can support the population to better work within reality in the global environment. And so, you know, if people are complaining about economic liberalization and open trade policies, that it's like they don't like having new products for cheaper prices and making more money. And so to me, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to say it's a bad thing, unless you're just trying to protect, you know, it's of course you want to have jobs for your poor, but I mean, you also want to lift the poor up out of poverty. So I don't really understand what the negative comments would be for it.
Okay, we still have another second half of the talk show for this one, Daniel. Make sure you are still with us on Economic Buzz. We are going to discuss more with Daniel Belfer about the importance of economic integration. Back on business and economic update news. Economic analysts sees the steep price increase on some basic necessities. Industry needs on the beginning of May would drive the inflation rate to be higher than the previous month. Moreover, the May inflation rate is predicted to be at the range of 0.4 to 0.5%.
Economic analysts predicted the inflation rate on May 2015 is going to be higher than inflation rate on the previous month. It is because the government's lateness in disbursing the fund from the state budget made the regional inflation control team work not optimum. Consequently, some prices of basic necessities and industry needs rose. Economic analyst from Institute for Development on Economics and Finance, or INDEF, Eni Srihartati, stated that inflation on May 2015 is predicted to be in the range of 0.4 to 0.5%.
Awal Mei kemarin ini sudah ada kenaikan harga tidak hanya kebutuhan bahan pokok, termasuk kebutuhan-kebutuhan produk-produk industri gitu. Jadi ini yang menyebabkan kemungkinan besar Mei itu inflasi bisa sekitar 0,4 sampai 0,5 poin gitu.
Eni Srihartati added that prices increase on basic necessities and were not supposed to happen as there was no trigger created by the government. Therefore, in order to anticipate the inflation rate in the coming months, the government has to make presidential instructions more effective so the price of basic necessities could be controlled. Jakarta, Ricky Anwardi, MNC Business.
Although in the last few years, food price has followed the market mechanism, the government is optimistic that it will be able to control the price in Ramadan season, Idul Fitri. The strategy adopted will be to have overwhelming supplies, so price will be controlled.
Food is always a concern when it comes to Ramadan season and Idul Fitri. However, the government needs to be cautious because in the past few years, food price has not been controllable as the food price follows market mechanism. The government could assure the price of rice will be more stable as the supply from State Logistics Agency remains sufficient. Yet, other commodities such as meat, egg, shallot, and chili will have more fluctuation in the price. In the last few years, the government's effort in stabilizing food price has not yet made it sustainable. Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, Sofian Jalil, explained that prices of some staple foods could be anticipated by the government by applying overwhelming supply scheme. Instead, importation could still be an option for other types of food.
Suplai yang berlebihan itu akan membuat harga, kan hukum perdagangan, hukum suplai and demand. Semakin banyak permintaan harus diikuti dengan suplai yang cukup. Ya. Semakin kurang suplai maka harga akan naik. Semakin banyak suplai harga akan turun. Jadi supaya itu kita jamin pasokannya yang paling penting.
The government's effort in stabilizing food price approaching public holiday is still seen a daily task, and it does not have a breakthrough. By making food price to follow market mechanism, the government would have a hard time to stabilize the price amid the overwhelming demand. Jakarta, Raharjo Patmo, MNC Business.
You are still with us on Economic Buzz. We still bring our discussion about the important economic integration. We have Daniel Belfer, Indonesia representative at Practus Asia. By the time we talk about this kind of market integration, everyone is heading off over Eurozone, European Union, EU. What can be noted when we talk about the progress journey of European Union, can they somehow now appear as the best role model one when we talk about the ideal economy? Should it be created or established?
Yeah, I think the European Union is the role model. I mean, it's the first region to really go after it. It's the best economic experiment of all time that I've seen. And so, you know, bringing together all these different countries of languages and cultures, saying, hey, we're going to work together, we're going to cooperate it, and we're going to do it in iterations and step by step. I think it's a amazing feat. You know, again, it brings people closer together. It opens up products, travel. People are calling themselves Europeans rather than as an individual nation. And so I think it's quite an amazing phenomenon. So we are seeing growing pains and issues of these countries cooperating together. But I also think that, you know, so say if Greece falls out of the European Union, I think, you know, they're going to be frustrated in the beginning. They might fall out. And then I think they're going to see the benefits of what it was like to be in the European Union, and they'll want to go back. So we don't know what's going to happen, but I think the benefits would be clear if you dropped out and then you wanted to come back.
This is very interesting. Speaking about growing pain, I believe it's not this bumpy road or hurdles when by the time we talk about the global economic integration. But so far, at least, how smooth do you see has this kind of globalization process in the economic domain proceeded among the countries nowadays, especially the major?
So regarding the European Union or
general globalization?
Generally. I mean, I think the regions are finding their competitive advantages and working together and trying to work with what they have near them to compete. I mean, with China, America, Southeast Asia, Europe, and then South America trying to come up, I think they're trying to find their way and be able to compete. If you don't, then your population isn't going to be happy, and they're not going to have the stuff that everyone sees on TV and wants, and everyone wants more stuff, and everyone wants to change and grow and enjoy their life. And so when they see this stuff on TV, in global media, you know, we're on TV here, we're broadcast in Singapore, people see this and people learn and they grow and they see things that they want and desire for, and they'll also push the governments to help get that as well. And so, yeah, I think they're going to continue to work together and try to figure out ways to be able to get more stuff.
Another session to discuss more about this again. Economic Buzz will be back soon with more feed from Daniel Belfer, Indonesia representative at Tractus Aid. Economic analysts considered the Ministry of Agriculture's plan to ask for a higher budget for the ministry wouldn't be effective to optimize productivity. As reported before, the ministry is planning to increase the budget allocation for agriculture sector in the draft of the 2016 budget. Economic analysts considered additional budget proposed by Ministry of Agriculture wouldn't be effectively increasing productivity in the sector and realize the food self-sufficiency in Indonesia. Instead of asking for higher budget, government is suggested to start improving the distribution pattern instead, which is actually the main factor that hampered the realization of the food self-sufficiency. Indonesia is having the tendency of lack food supply in the market during Ramadan. A significant increase of demand has usually occurred, but it is not followed by good distribution process. Infrastructure development is mentioned to be one thing that needs to be done in order to improve the distribution process. Moreover, there is also subsidy given for fertilizer and seeds for farmers to optimize the productivity, which is considered to be necessary to boost agriculture sector performance. Jakarta, MNC Business Report. Even when Ramadan season is getting near, the government is still lacking information about food stock on farmers and players, as the government does not have sufficient information about prime areas for gas that could not take advantage of harvesting period optimally.
Agriculture analysts says the government is not geared up in safeguarding the supply of food approaching Ramadan season in terms of the technical aspect and the trade.
regarding the food stock on farmers and the business players. International expert in agriculture economics H.S. Dillon state that the government does not have sufficient information on the forecast for harvesting season in prime areas and the other ones. As a result, the government couldn't take advantage of the harvesting period optimally.
Soal ramalan duanya ini mereka belum lagi ketahui dengan baik di daerah-daerah mana panennya akan bagus, ya, di daerah mana yang kurang baik. Jadi itu saya lihat kurang kesiapan pemerintah baik dari segi teknis maupun di segi perdagangannya.
Dillon added that there is only one food expert and professional that is currently working in the State Logistic Agency or Bulog. Therefore, the government statement of the supply of food, particularly in Ramadan season, is adopted to be sufficient. Jakarta, Rian Wardi and Ayus Carlos, MNC Business.
You're watching Economic Buzz. We still have Daniel Belfer, Indonesia Practice Asia, to share his view of the topic that in this talk. Now, further to our conversation earlier, talking about the potential friction might appear or happen among the country members of this economic integration. What will be the best strategy by the time we're talking about minimizing those visible and obvious risks when something is already before our eyes?
Yep. So for economic integration, you know, it's a serious issue. It's very intense, both politically, diplomatically, economically, and it takes a lot of time and planning, cooperation with people that are very different from you and have different interests and motivations. But to be able to work together, you do that together, slowly but surely, step by step, and as it goes along, you make small tweaks and improvements. For single nations, you know, it's going to be that government's responsibility to be able to support the population. You know, they need to work to improve education, see that the way that their economy is changing, and start building that skill base that's focused on the jobs that are being created through this economic integration. It's building the extra prosperity, and so you need pro-poor policies, reasonable tax policies that are going to be able to give the budget and the wealth to be able to improve your country, infrastructure to be able to open up businesses in different areas, supporting rural communities through this infrastructure, where those people can get their products to market as well, it is a way to move forward and be able to really be effective in using.
On your outlook, how this market integration, globalization, will give new ways regarding this kind of diplomatic relations among countries?
Yeah, I think for me personally, when I look at the globe and where things are going, you know, the countries that are having big problems, you know, they're not really partaking in globalization or improving products or getting better. You know, we're seeing a lot of issues in the Middle East. We continuously see issues in Africa, and these countries are stuck, you know, and they're fighting. They're fighting because of it. You know, they want opportunity, they want growth, they want to live a good life, but they don't have it, and nor have they been given the opportunity to build it. And so thus they fight them. And so this is the biggest friction. If your population is unemployed or bored or angry, then they can call to arms and they'll fight. And so it's the government's job, as well as the population and civilization's job, to work together to be able to build a better life together.
Speaking about bridging the gap among the country members of this globalization market integration, it is said that although integration will bring a lot of benefits to the major, say it from the low barrier, increased productivity, somehow it is never without cost for the minority. How do you comment on this? And who are they referring by the time you talk about this kind of minority?
And I wouldn't even call it a minority, and it could be a majority of people that might not be seeing the effects and the benefits of globalization. You know, again, it's dependent on the government and the businesses to be able to support the rest of the population as well. And so, you know, we'll take Indonesia, for example, and we have the ASEAN Economic Community coming up, which might start strong or it might start very slow. In my opinion, I think it's going to start slow and be a work in progress, but that's fine. But you know, if the government of Indonesia doesn't help support to focus on Indonesia's competitive advantages and where the real benefits are and where Indonesia can excel, then the typical Indonesian person, and some of the less wealthy will start getting angry, and that would be a problem.
General Belfer, I know that you have very strong concern, attention when we talk about this ASEAN as the economic region. I would like to ask you, where is Indonesia positioned then under this kind of current global situation and this kind of globalization as well as market integration?
Yep.
Make sure you are with us. We still have one more segment on IBAS discussing about the importance of economic integration. We have reached our last segment discussing about the importance of integration, and we're going to have another view from Mr. Daniel Belfer in Asia to conclude his view toward the topic. You already mentioned several format or concept or design of integration, be it NAFTA, CHAFTA, EC. This is also another buzzword coming on, Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. Where are we? When we talk or giving the context of emerging Indonesia, where are we, and what form of economic integration, according to your view, will be best fitted for an emerging economy like that?
Yep. Well, I mean, we've seen Indonesia take roles in enormous, many types of economic integration. I mean, we have, ASEAN itself, which has a free trade agreement with the ASEAN 6, is expanding to the rest of ASEAN with Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam. That's going to be expanding. So we've seen those barriers go down on a tariff basis. We also see ASEAN +3, where they have frameworks in there, and then we have New Zealand's included, Australia's included. We see RCEP coming up, and so there's numerous economic integration activities going on. For Indonesia, I think Indonesia has a lot of protectionist issues going on, but they are opening and trying to find their way in the system to be able to promote the country as well and find their place. Indonesia is a large country with a large population, tons of natural resource wealth, great agricultural wealth. Indonesia has many competitive advantages to be able to excel. Unfortunately, I don't think all the benefits are found for such a big country on a policy basis and a directional basis. So I think there are many small tweaks that Indonesia can do to more rapidly find improvements in education, business policy, ease of doing business, things like that. Indonesia can really have some moderately simple actions to improve and better incorporate and then improve the livelihoods of.
Are there any visible signs, signals, especially from our current administration, that now Indonesia is welcoming this kind of globalization, liberalization, this kind of integration? How open are we when you talk about we should be open?
I don't think the change of administration is doing much more for open economic integration or trying to figure things out in a very rational way at the moment. I think Indonesia is still trying to find its way and where it plays in economic integration. I think Indonesia will continue to go along with the trade, free trade agreements that are coming up, the economic integration initiatives that are underway through, say, the AEC. I do think Indonesia can take a much more leading and active role within economic integration. The G20 nation, it accounts for 40% of Southeast Asia's GDP and population. Indonesia could be a leader if it really stepped to the forefront and took a leadership role.
On your global perspective, Daniel, what kind of new world order we can expect by the time now interconnection getting much and much?
Wow, I have no clue. We're seeing some pulls and directions where Asia has really come up over the past 20 years. Still seeing tensions in Asia, but again, the companies work together. We're seeing a flow of funds and investment from Asia to many different countries, whether it's in Asia or to other continents as well. And I mean, it's the competition for investment dollars to be able to grow and expand, and our growth model where we look at GDP as our measure for country success. And countries are going to continue for this and cooperating with the people that are the best to do that.
Another crucial point I should not skip from this discussion is like by the time we have this increasing interdependence among nations, how do you comment on people's worries about losing the sovereignty of our own nations and identity? Everything is blind to be one single global village one day, if not soon.
Yep. I mean, there's that issue of where you start losing a bit of your identity. I'm an American, and so we've already seen Hollywood flood the world with great movies and musicals across the world and everything. And so we've seen New York baseball hats all over the world, and so people start to blend in. Where fashion trends change, whatever, and so you lose a bit of identity, and that means. But you can also see conflict decrease, where people have a better understanding of their neighbors, whether it's a close area or people from far away. You have a greater understanding of each other, of their cultures, and what those people are all about, so it's easier to get along. Right. So with Southeast Asia as well, I've talked to so many Indonesians that, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, it was rare that you found someone that went to, say, Thailand or to Singapore or whatever. Now you hear of so many mobility. Freer mobility, a wider curiosity, and a desire to see other countries.
Very well. Daniel Belfler, your Indonesia representative at TRACS. Again, thank you so much for your insights.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's wrap up our talk show for this time. Hope to have you soon with other issue to bring up in the discussion. Signing off. Thank you for watching and have a